So this is going to be a lot different than the other videos that are on here. This is only going to be on YouTube because how freakishly long it's going to be. So what's probably going to be behind this is a speed paint that's going to be like ultra slowed down. At least that's what I'm hoping is going to be behind. Something's going to be behind this. But what this is going to be, which you're probably going to see by the title, is this is just me doing an unfiltered talk about the lore of my characters because I've been trying to write it down for like months and months and months and months, and I keep failing at writing it. And then it dawned on me, I have a YouTube channel where I post like, animations of the lore and speed paints of it. Why not just make a video of it? So that's what this is. Um, we'll see how long this gets. But again, this is very unfiltered, so there might be some back and forth in this, but it's something, you know? So the characters that are going to be shown, I'm not going to be popping up images of them because I don't know how like back and forth I'm going to be, but also I'm lazy. I don't feel like editing, but I will point out like if a character that I have, I'll say their name and I'll kind of try and describe what they look like. The one character that you're going to see is Phoenix, which is, my main character, my persona, things like that. That is the thing that is talking right now to you. That is them. Though obviously this is a chibiified version of them. So that is the character you'll get the visual of. In the description, I will link the toy houses of the characters that I mention by name. If I have images of them, there are going to be some characters that I just don't have drawings of because I have not drawn all my characters because I'm lazy. Anyhow, um, so yeah, I'm just gonna get into it. So the entire story and the entire lore really wraps around just Phoenix themselves, the main character of, I guess, my story, because they are my persona. So it just makes sense. Um, so the characters that you're going to start out with is Phoenix, followed by their twin sister, identical twin sister, Rose, and it's going to be their mother and their father. So Phoenix as a character is a mix between what their father is, which is a Western Kitsune, or Western Ninetails, however you want to put it. I say Western Ninetails. It is a species that I created. I will also have a link to the whole, like, information page about them, because they are, like, an open species, all that stuff. But anyhow, it's a species I created because I just didn't want to say, oh, they're a Ninetails, they're a Kitsune, because, I wanted to be a little original. Um, So they're a mix between that on their dad's side, and then their mother is one of the gods in the world that I have, because my world has a system of immortal beings. They're not gods in the sense that they are holy divine beings or they created anything or things like that. What they are is that they are either already like mythical creatures that are immortal, think actual phoenixes and a plethora of other just mythology creatures that are immortal that I probably can't think of, or they are a human that in some shape or form managed to gain immortality. And now these are humans ranging from across multiple different spans of humanity. So you might have some immortal beings that are really, 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 really old. Like they're old timey humans, but they've kind of just kept living and they've adapted to life, or maybe they didn't. Or you might have some gods that are fairly new. But out of the gods, all of them are older than like our generation of people. So like an actual human being. Well, all but one, but we'll get there. Um, so a lot of the gods are very corrupt because they are humans, and a lot of the ways that you would get immortality in this universe are pretty corrupt ways. Uh, Manipulations, deals, things like that. A lot of them having to do with mythical beings. Think of like any sort of way that some random human could gain immortality across different like mythologies that doesn't have to deal with a god gifting them immortality. And that's probably one of the ways that they could get it. Like it's very open on how. Um so Phoenix's mom is one of them, and she's a lot older. But she's very adaptive. She's very cunning, and that's kind of her whole thing. Because with the gods, as they keep becoming a god and as they continue to be a god, they start to lose the human side of themselves and become like what their core like self is, which for most of the gods I have, it's their core self. They're not good people, so they start to become more rotten. Like that starts to become more upfront, and not only how they act, but how they look. Because while they do have human forms, they gain a more feral. They become furries. They become furries. Um, a form that really shows how they actually are. Though most of the gods, while they have an in between form from their human and their actual like godly form, which is like anthro furries, things like that, their true forms are going to all be tars because I like tars. Tars being like a minotaur, but a minotaur is specifically for horse, so tar is when it's any other animal. Um, because I like them and I think they're cool. That's why. Um, so yeah, so their in between form is just going to be furries, but then their actual like true big form is going to be big, godly tars because they're gods. Why not make them ginormous? So with Phoenix's mother, sh- her anthroform, things like that, is a fox, like just a general red fox. Because her whole thing, her whole persona, I guess, is being this cunning, kind of manipulative, high in power woman, like this very much boss of a woman. She does things to get money, to gain power, to gain control. She collects things that are strong, or beings or creatures that are strong. She tinkers with them. She has other people like do stuff with them, things like that, purely so that she can sell them off to high places of power throughout history, so that they could use them in like wars and shit like that. So that's kind of her whole thing, is that she's power hungry as shit. So she's not a good person. Which, by the way, because I know my actual parents watch some of my stuff. This is not based on my real mom. My real mom's great. So please don't think that. I'm just gonna get that out there like right now. Anyhow, so that's the mom, and then the dad being just a Western Nine Tails is just he's just a dad. He's cool. There's not much to him because all it was is that um Phoenix's mom wanted to create a mixed species, like because like I said, she collects like these powerful beings, things like that. She was like, what if I create one? What if I create one that's partly myself? Because at the time this happened, the gods didn't really have children because they were kind of above that. Because as a god, they don't really need to do that stuff, so they can just choose not to. So yeah. So Phoenix's mom was like, "Oh, what if I actually just do it? How powerful would this be? Would they be immortal? Would they not be immortal?" Like, so she picked a creature that she didn't have in her collection that she was interested in having and decided to do that with. A creature that was, humanoid, because Western Nine Tails, they have a human form, they have an anthro form, things like that. So they are humanoid. They have human intelligence, all that stuff. So she does that, and she has identical twins, which is Phoenix and Rose, Phoenix's twin sister. And I will state this right now. I am going to use he, him pronouns for Phoenix because Phoenix is trans, because I am trans. So, yeah. So, they are identical twins. So, they were both born female, just to prevent any confusion. Anyhow, continuing. Um, the setting in which they are in is going to be somewhere in the United States, but it's a very remote place. So, think like far off in the woods, somewhere that like people don't like really explore. So, they don't really have contact with other people as they're growing up. It's more like a cabin. They have everything they need because, like, their mother is a fucking god. So they do have all the stuff that they need. So they're never in need of anything, things like that. But they're very sheltered, like homeschool type sheltered. Um, Phoenix's dad does try and teach them things like that. They teach them lessons on, actual like Western Nine-Tail cultures, things like that. He also tries to stop them from eating a lot of meat because a thing with Western Ninetales is that they hunt humans. They are carnivores and their main source of food is humans. And they don't have that because they're out in the middle of nowhere. And that instinct to hunt humans is gained when they first eat a human. So most packs that you'll see are very more wild, so they're okay with it. But Phoenix's dad just being on their own gained a bit more humanity and was like, "Hey, I don't want them eating meat because I don't want them to do that. I don't know what sparks it." They do eventually eat meat because they need to because they are carnivores or they're omnivores, but mainly meat. And it's when they realize it has to be human for it to work. So it's just their dad trying to protect them, teach them his own culture, things like that throughout most of them growing up. He tries to train them. He's not aware of what Phoenix's mom's plan is. So he's training them to use their powers because they are born with powers. Phoenix has electricity. Rose has fire. Um, and Phoenix and Rose's dad also has fire. So Rose trains a lot better with their dad than Phoenix does. But eventually, even though they're not supposed to like explore and things like that, not just explore the woods, Phoenix does end up exploring. They go out, they sneak out, things like that. And that is where they start to discover, which I do not have a name for them, the Phoenix that would become their mentor. Um, because at the time, my character's Phoenix name is not Phoenix. So I'm not going to say what their actual name was, because that part of the lore is just my dead name. I know, it's confusing, I'm sorry. But yeah. So basically, they do discover an actual Phoenix, which, in my world, stuff like that, they also have just an anthro form, because, why not? They look like a generic kind of Phoenix, but very motherly looking, things like that. They're older, they're wiser, but they're still strong. They're a strong being. So she takes Phoenix under their wing, no pun intended, and just kind of teaches them how to use their powers properly. Teaches them more than what Phoenix's dad can teach them, things like that. And then slowly, Phoenix is becoming more like stronger and stronger and stronger to the point where her mom kind of notices a lot more. It's like, hey, this one's really strong. Now, at the time, I will mention neither of them are immortal because that was like one of the things they tried to figure out when doing that is like if a god does have a child, is the child immortal? Um, and while in the universe, if the god has a child with another god, then yeah, it would be immortal. But since this is a demi-human, no, they are not. They're tough, but they're not immortal. Um, so and they do age a lot slower, though, I will say as well. But that's because of the Western Ninetales thing being there. Them aging slower, like they live really, really long. Think kind of like whales, how they live like really long, but like extended a lot. But on top of that, them being demi-humans means they grow up even slower. Um, so their mental age around when this is happening, the next one I'm gonna say, I'd say is probably like around 11-ish. Though I haven't really set that in stone. They're still kids. Like they're not teenagers, they're not tweens, they are kids. Um, Eventually Phoenix's mom is like, okay, I'm done trying to raise these people. I'm done trying to pretend to be happy-go-lucky, have a happy little family with these people. Um, I want to start doing the business side of things. I want to actually use them for what I wanted to use them for. So at that point in time, because she wants to try and keep a good image of herself as their parent, because to her, she's like, that'll make them easier to train, easier to, manipulate into what I need. She sends people that she has for hire because she has like a whole like business thing at this time as if she was a real just human, even though she's a god, because that's what the gods do. So they don't get bored. They pretend to be just humans in high power. Um, she's basically sends a raid, trying to grab the kids. They don't really care about the dad. The dad panics, the kids panicking, all that stuff. At this point in the story, and that's why the dad doesn't really have much lore, the dad dies because they're trying to protect Phoenix and Rose. Um, Rose goes one way, Phoenix goes the other way, because Phoenix knows that they have a mentor that's out in the woods, and they want to go towards them. The people that are out to get them, their priority is Phoenix, though, because Phoenix was showing more, progression, more output of power, things like that. Like yeah, if you can grab Rose, great, but go after Phoenix. So they follow them, which lets Rose get away, which is why they split up in the first place. They're like, hey, at least one of us needs to get out of here. So by this point, Rose is gone. They're running. They're doing their own thing. They're safe, for the most part. Phoenix, on the other hand, is running towards their mentor. They have people behind them. Now, this is at a time in which people have guns, not like modern guns, but still. So, spooky for a little kid. They eventually do meet up with their mentor, who doesn't have a lot of time to understand what's going on, but is like, hey, this kid that I've taken under my wing, that's basically my kid, is in danger. I'm going to protect them. They do try to protect them. The setting of where this is going to be like at a cliff type area in the forest. Um, Phoenix is trying to avoid getting grabbed, things like that. But so is their mentor. They're backed up on the cliff. The mentor thinks to start flying themselves upwards to get more leverage, at which point, because they themselves don't have much experience with dealing with humans with guns, they do get shot down. So they are falling down the cliff. But they themselves are immortal. So they would be fine. But Phoenix, being, a child, doesn't quite comprehend that. All they comprehend is this is a deadly fall, and they just fell. So in their panic, Phoenix jumps after them. So this is like one of those really big key points in the story, because Phoenix and their mentor are following. The mentor wants to protect Phoenix, but knows that they will survive and Phoenix will die at this point. So instead of doing that, because they're like, you know what, I've lived for like forever and ever and ever, I finally found someone who is pure, I was able to train, things like that, is an actual good being. I don't want them to die like this. They decide to give Phoenix their own immortality, which is one of the ways that you can become immortal, is by, the creature gifting you their immortality. So instead of Phoenix dying, their mentor does end up dying. A whole tragic thing, I fall to the bottom of the cliff. What? How am I still alive? Parting words, turn to ashes. I don't know. Yeah. So Phoenix now has a surge of a lot of power that they did not have before in them. And they are emotional, and they are a child, and they are filled with adrenaline. So they kind of go a little haywire. So, wild animal in the corner type situation. Uh, they end up running off for a little bit. So they're running through the forest, they're panicked, they don't know how to control themselves because they have all this, like, their powers are times 100 right now because there's too much energy going through them. They don't know what to do with it, they don't know what's happening, all this stuff. And that's where they run into another key point in the story, because that's where they find another immortal being, which I actually do not have a name for because they don't want to be named. They're just an evil immortal being. They just prefer, because they're very old. This is like one of the original, like the first immortal beings. They just don't want to be named. But they are the form of just a snake, a black snake with a red belly. And they can speak. They speak to Phoenix. They're like, hey, I can help you. I can help you get revenge. I can help you do all these things. This is meant to kind of be a thing for, like, temptation and all that stuff. Because I was like, yeah, that'd be cool. Literally, that's it. But either way, they do. And the reason why this immortal being is a snake, which Phoenix will find out a lot later in life, is because just like Phoenix, they started out as just an anthropomorphic creature that gained immortality. But because they were already anthropomorphic, they weren't human, they were a lot stronger than the immortal beings that were human. So being scared of this creature that's now immortal as well, that's a lot stronger than them, they managed, the human immortals that were there at the time, managed to kind of seal them into just a normal snake. One of these beings would be Phoenix's mom, because Phoenix's mom is one of the older immortals. So they're kind of stuck as a snake, and they need something or someone that they could try and kind of manipulate to kind of get revenge. Um, and Phoenix being, a kid, also being an anthropomorphic creature that was turned into an immortal instead of a human. He knows that they're a lot stronger. He knows that they're already going to be ostracized by the gods, the same way that he was. So he kind of joins with them, and Phoenix keeps them around. So now they're bound together, they're linked together, things like that. So he's always there. He's just not always visible. He can make himself visible, but most of the time he doesn't. So for Phoenix, he's there in the form of under their fur. It's a long, like really long snake tattoo kind of on their skin. And so in their human form, you can see that tattoo wounding all the way around their body and stopping with the head at its neck. Though, since they're almost always in their anther form or another type of form that has fur, you don't really see it. Um, so that's kind of the mark that he leaves that shows that he's always there. But this kind of helps Phoenix control their power, hone their power, things like that, because there's something else there that knows how to control that power and things like that. Um, at this point, Phoenix has calmed down enough, like they have that control of their power because of the help and things like that. They continue to keep running, but eventually they are going to get caught because they are still an 11-year-old child. Um, they get caught, they get taken away, things like that. Um, Mind you, this part of the lore was created when I was in like middle school, so yes, you're gonna have that I was in an evil lab type thing. But I'm trying to make it a little different. It's more so that Phoenix's mom got them back, tried to make it seem as if Phoenix's mom rescued them. Like that's what she tried to make it seem. Um, she still basically manipulated Phoenix to train them up, make them stronger, things like that, until eventually she let go of the whole "I'm the good guy" act and made them start fighting other creatures. Um, this was to actually give them fighting training, but also to get Phoenix's mother more money. Because what they would do is that it was basically a gladiator type thing. It was, hey, come watch these two animals fight. So that is what they did. And Phoenix, because they were immortal, would always win. But, they didn't want to fight people, they didn't want to kill things, they didn't want to do all that. They kind of had to. And this is how they grew their powers and became like really skilled with controlling themselves, controlling their powers, controlling their forms, things like that. Um So they're stuck kind of in this training ground type esque thing for years and years and years, and eventually they do get sold to people. This would be around the times that the big wars are happening, like the world wars, things like that. They get sold to countries, things like that, to be used in war. So they have fought in that kind of way as well. But eventually, finally, we're getting towards more modern day. Not modern day like right now, but getting closer to there. Um, Phoenix is moved to a facility in New York because Phoenix's mother is talking and doing deals with the American government. And that is when another character of mine, Lux, comes in. And basically Lux is another god, but they are a lot younger of a god. They're a rebellious god. And the form that they ended up taking up was one of a dragon. Um, so they're very chaotic. They love to destroy stuff, cause chaos, and all this. Like, they're uncontrolled because they themselves are also still kind of a teenager. So, a rebel. They come in and they destroy the whole fucking building because they are, a gigantic dragon. They can be huge, spanning the lengths of buildings dragons. So they destroy the building because they're like, hey, I heard that all these creatures were in here. Let's set them free. Because at this point in time, they're still good. They're just chaotically good, is all they are. So they do that, and that's when they meet Phoenix. And Phoenix thinks they're cool. Phoenix is thankful that they freed them, so they follow Lux. Um, and Lux is like, cool, you're also immortal. I'll hang out with you, things like that. So they bring them back to where they hang out with their people, which is an island around New York that is encased or protected in a veil of magic that makes it so that unless you are invited in, it doesn't exist to you. Like you just go past it. So yeah, that's kind of their safe haven. So Phoenix is brought back there, and that is where Phoenix meets some of the older characters, like Raven being one. This is where Phoenix is Lux home. This is also where Phoenix re-meets up with Rose because it turns out that Lux dragged Phoenix along and was cool with them being there because they're like, you look just like Rose. I don't think that's a coincidence. And it wasn't. So then you have the reunite thing, like years and years later. It's like, oh my god, my sister. No, wait, my brother? Oh, brother now. Cool. Kumbaya. Things like that. So all that happens. Phoenix is getting settled in, and they still need to find a way of, living. So what they do is Raven basically runs an organization, which is an organization of assassins, because all the beings there are in some way, shape, or form really tough or immortal. Because Raven is a minor god, Lux is a minor god, Phoenix is a minor god, and then Rose is just strong. Um, so they're like, well, we all have human forms. We're all really tough or impossible to kill. Why not kill people for a job? So that's what they do. They are assassins, things like that, for hire, all that stuff. So Phoenix is already really skilled with guns, so they kind of take up a sniper role, things like that. The you don't know who did it, but it's very much not a secret type kills. Um, Rose has kind of already taken the slot of someone that's really good with poison and things like that. So that is what they do for kills. Um, Lux is very large and chaotic, so they do like larger or multi people hits, and then Raven just kind of organizes stuff. So they're living like that. They're all kind of rebellious, things like that. Raven is the older one, so everybody's kind of looking for him advice, which is why he's the one that's organizing stuff. All the rest of them are still kind of in their teenage kind of era or teenage age mentally. Um, Things go on, but Phoenix kind of starts to fall in love with Lux. So they do start to have a relationship, but at the same time, Phoenix is concerned because they're also realizing that um, Raven is not a good person. And Lux is kind of looking up to Raven, and slowly they're becoming less good and more a bad person. Um, they want to do more like chaotic things. They want to party more, things like that. They're caring less about the lives that they're taking. They're taking lives even when it's not like paid for them to do so. All those sorts of things. And Phoenix is becoming concerned. It is like, yo, this isn't right. So then it's a lot of fights, a lot of arguments, things like that. But Phoenix doesn't want to leave because this is like their home. This is all they have. So that they just kind of stay quiet. And eventually, at some point, the unnamed god that Phoenix has comes out. They actually make themselves known. And by this point in time, they had only been talking to Phoenix. Like, Phoenix was the only person they were talking to, but eventually they do actually talk to Lux. Um, and Lux, as they've been becoming basically more corrupted, is like, hey, I like this one. I like this being, and they don't realize just how bad this being is, and they don't realize they're being manipulated as well. Um, so then what happens then is seen as Lux getting bit by the unnamed god, and because they're in their snake form, they do have venom, but instead of that venom actually like killing them, it just basically corrupts them all the way. Like no turning back. The last bit of their goodness or humanity is just kind of gone to where they are basically a vessel for this unnamed god to cause, destruction, chaos, all that stuff. Because that's what they want. They don't like humans. They don't like the gods that were once human. They don't want them to be there. They want them to be gone. Um, and Phoenix had kind of been satisfying their want for that by their job, while also kind of keeping them down low. Because through Phoenix's training, they had become strong enough to, instead of being manipulated and controlled slightly by the unnamed god, they were now just kind of a caretaker for the unnamed god. Like, it was very much in their solitude, kind of coming to the conclusion of, I don't want to listen to you, but you're stuck with me. So instead of me being stuck with you, I'm going to make it so that you can't be doing this bad stuff. So now they're just a way for Phoenix to kind of control their powers and use their power to their full extent while not being able to do any of the things they wanted to because they were not able to manipulate Phoenix the way they thought they would be. But they're stuck because they made themselves stuck because their hope was they could make Phoenix stuck. But in the end, now they're stuck. So at this point, Phoenix is just the thing that's preventing them from, causing a shit ton of chaos and destroying humanity and all that. Um, so Lux is no longer really good. That means they're getting a lot more violent with Phoenix, things like that. Phoenix realizes something is wrong. They don't realize that the unnamed god is the one that did it. They think that this is Raven. They think this is Raven's doing, Raven's teaching, things like that, and they're done with this. They're like, I don't know what I need to do. I don't know what I can do because this is a god. This is a god that's been around a bit longer than me. They're stronger than me, but I need to do something. So they confront Raven. Raven gets very mad and decides to try and fight them because their way of putting people in their place is to kind of, violently keep them in their place. So this is when a whole fight breaks out and Phoenix does end up killing them. And this is the first time that has ever happened. This is kind of Phoenix realizing I just killed something that should be unkillable. I just killed something that no mortal has been able to kill. What? Whoa. Type situation. Um, and this is when they would earn like the nickname of kind of like God Killer. This is where the other gods that were alive at the time get very concerned. They get very worried, and they don't want to be around Phoenix. They want Phoenix to go away because they had known that this was able to happen. That is why that they pushed and kind of sealed away the unknown god or the unnamed god. Um, because they didn't want to die. Obviously, that's why they became immortal in the first place. So to hear that it happened through like whispers and stuff like that, it's like, hey, this god's not around anymore. What happened to them? I got really scared. But in the short term, what happens is Lux walks in on this because they're like, hey, commotion happened. What in the world's going on? All they see is someone that they saw as like a father figure, a mentor to them, dead, and Phoenix red-handed, or more so gold-handed, because their blood is going to be golden, and all that stuff. Lux gets very angry, as reasonably should. That, along with the fact that they're not really themselves anymore, they attack Phoenix themselves. It is a very short thing. They claw at Phoenix's face. Phoenix kind of hits them with an electrical charge. So this is where Phoenix will lose their eye. You can't really see it on this Abby, but you can see the other eye is kind of white and there's like a scar there. That's because on the rest sheet it's a lot easier to see. They don't have an eye. That is a fake eye. So they are blind in that eye. That eye is gone. Because if a god hurts another god, while they can heal from it a little bit, it's gonna stick around a lot more. Um, but only the gods that were non-human already when they became immortal can actually kill another god. The rest can just hurt them real bad. So Phoenix is blind in one eye, and Lux ends up running away with this huge, like, one of those you were hit by lightning kind of scars going down their body. And they're stuck with that kind of forever. It doesn't leave any like physical like effects. It's just the scar there because I wanted to show something that shows this battle happened. But Lux runs away. They flee. They're on their own now because they realized this person just killed a god. Um, I can't fight that. I don't know how to do that. I need to get out of here. Um, so at this point in time, it is just Rose and Phoenix. And a few other minor characters that I have, like I have a protege and some things like that, that had kind of been hired into the whole organization as time went on. Those are also kind of in my toy house, which is what I'll be linking. Though I'm not gonna go into detail about them because they're not a main part of the lore. That's just a way for me to have characters and keep making characters and like having adopts that I could buy, honestly. So that's all that is. Either way. So Phoenix decides, alright, we still need to have a way to get money, a way to live, things like that. I'm going to take control of this organization. I'm going to run it right. So they make it more lawful, they make it more fair, things like that. So they're no longer just getting anybody as long as they get money shoved in their face. They are only dealing with more corrupt people, things like that, and actually helping people. Um, so yeah, so they're still doing the assassination thing, but they're not making enough money to really get by. So Phoenix, Lux, and the small crew that they have decide we need to do something else, but we still want to do this because we want to make a difference. So they decide to start taking up music because a lot of them are more musically inclined. That's what they do to calm down, things like that. So I'm just gonna time skip a whole bunch because not much happens. So basically, Phoenix does music on the side, like that's their cover up, like their main thing of who they are. They're more famous doing that. It's a band, but on the down low, they still do the assassin stuff. Um, so by this point in time, again, they are more famous, and they've got their foot in the ground. They've got a holding in life. They're comfy. They're set. By this point in time, they had also met Ivy, which is a more anthropomorphic cat character who Rose ends up falling in love with. So Ivy and Rose become a couple. Um, Super cute, all that stuff. She doesn't really do the assassination thing, but she still wants to hang out with Rose and be with Rose, so she lives in the same place they live. Um, at the same time, due to them like doing like more violent stuff, that whole thing that I talked about where if they once they eat human meat, that's kind of like becomes part of their cravings or diet, things like that. It's something they need to have. Phoenix does end up tasting human blood because at some point they're using their teeth and their claws for fighting people, fighting things, because it makes sense. They have teeth and claws. Why not use them? Um, Phoenix finds out the hard way about that because she wasn't warned about that because their dad was sheltering them without telling them. So now Phoenix does every now and then when they do hits, they have to hunt. I will not go into further detail about that because this is YouTube, but I think you get the context close. Rose, on the other hand, learning from Phoenix's mistake, is very careful about that. They don't use their teeth and their claws. They stick to just kind of using poisons and things like that, so that that doesn't happen to them. So they are still fine. Phoenix is not. And now it's just them kind of living for a little bit, and then the next big event that happens is Phoenix and Rose kind of scrolling through the city, kind of because they're still in New York, so they're just kind of hanging out, things like that, and they do run into Lux. Again, Lux is angry. Lux has been angry for a long time, and Lux wants revenge. They they're just mad. They don't know what to do with this anger, this chaos, things like that. Now, Phoenix has been aware that Lux has been out in New York for a while because Lux has been causing chaos for like years and years and years. And it's one of those things like because they're a being, they don't really have a human attached to them. These things would be like mass events that would go unsolved and things like that. Because if there's no human attached to it, like there's nothing they can really do. And even if like someone really high in power realized what this was, it was a thing of like, well, you can't just say that. So it was more a bunch of lines of things happening with no conclusion. Um, but didn't think that they would come back and attack them. But unfortunately, Lux at this point, because they see them, they're mad. They're like, you know what? I think I'm strong enough now. They go and they attack them. But unfortunately, Rose still is mortal at this time. So Phoenix is spending a lot of their energy trying to protect Rose. But unfortunately, they have not gained the ability to go into their tar or feral form. Because for Lux, their form isn't really a tar, it's just a large dragon. It's a feral form. For the rest of them, it's tars because I wanted it to be. Um, so they don't know how to get to that. But they're just trying to protect their sister as best they can. Um, Unfortunately, I'm going to go into that on Phoenix's power real quick. The key thing being, they're not immune to fire, and they might be immortal, but things still hurt. They can still be hurt. They can still be immobilized, things like that. They can heal from it. They will heal from anything, but they're still taking the damage in the first place. So, like, that's the key thing. But also, along with that, while their powers are boosted like tenfold, their powers still have limitations. And that is that to use their electricity and things like that, they're sapping their own body heat to create that electricity and the heat of the things around them. So they can only push it so far before they there's nothing left to kind of push out. They only have so much electricity they can create and things like that. And that works. That's kind of the key thing or key point with a lot of their powers. Um, So this is what I mean by I'm going to be jumping around because I'm going to take a pause and kind of explain their full powers and then kind of explain Rose's powers. Though Rose, I'll explain first. Rose is just fire creation and manipulation. They can manipulate fire, create it. It's really, really hot. They don't really have a set measurement, but hot enough to do a decent amount of damage. Now, they are resistant to fire. They are not immune to fire. They are resistant to fire at the heat that they can output. But if something emits fire that is a lot larger, a lot more chaotic, a lot hotter, they are not going to be immune to that. That would be Lux. Lux's fire is a lot stronger. Um, but we will get back to that. So that's Rose's power. Not much else to it. With Phoenix, because of the fact they have so many different things going on, they gave them their powers and boosted their powers and things like that. And also because they're my persona and I wanted them to do cool things, let's be real. Um, they have a good few more things. So their baseline powers is they have manipulation of electricity. They have the ability to change forms. So they can be in an anthro form, furry. They can be in a human form, myself. Um, they can be in a feral form that is the actual size of a fox, but still has the 9 tails, purple fur, things like that. It can be in a larger fox form, but it's still the size of like a wolf. So, big and all that stuff. And that's kind of all they had as before they became an immortal being, things like that. Now, after they became an immortal being, they discovered a few things. They discovered that they had their own realm, which I would count it as the digital realm, which was kind of an ultimate end to the boost of their powers. Was they're able to access this realm. It's basically kind of a void of a realm. I don't want to make the joke, but think like domain expansion over here. Um, So it's black, it's weightless, kind of like space, but what you see is these glowing light blue things, and those things are modern day electric devices and things like that. So think, your phones, your computers, everything like that. Phoenix is able to go into, control, mess around with them, basically kind of an ultimate hacker type thing. Um, because their base power was electricity, I was like, you know what, why not? So they have access to this realm. That realm is theirs to have, theirs to be in. They can take other people into it, but they really don't. So it's normally just their own thing, and it's normally just how they like hack into certain stuff. So they're more of a tech whiz with that aspect of it. Um, they have that. Their electricity is boosted basically, so the original power that they have to do stuff with electricity is now really, really powerful. They've gained a few new forms. So on top of the forms that they already had, they now have their god form, their tar form. Um, which I don't really know how to describe. It has wings and it has armor. Because I will go into their weapons as well. But again, I'll show a link in the description that should have the photo of it or anything like that. Uh, but their tar form is more towards like the top half of themselves is there, but then the actual other half is meant to be more representation of the phoenix that they gained their immortality from. Because that to me made sense. So they have these golden wings, things like that. They cannot fly. They are humongous. They cannot fly because something that huge would not be able to fly. So the wings are decorative, but they also have armor that is specifically for that form only. They have armor, they have a shield, and they have a spear. So the spear they just use normally, but it's just sized up to, fit with the form. So they have that form. They also have just a larger anthroform. So think like size of a skyscraper. We're talking like Godzilla territory large. And they have that, which is how they're able to fight Lux, because Lux is huge as well. And most of the gods do have those two forms. It's like a default thing the gods have. They have a very large form and they have a tar form. Or a feral form, depending on my mood. So yeah, they gain those. But turning into those two forms takes a lot of energy, like a lot of energy. So they cannot keep it up for a very long at all. And at this point in time, like in the timeline, They don't know how to get to their tar form. They don't know how to get to their true like god form. They haven't gotten to that point yet. They only know how to get really big. That's about it. But in all their forms, what they have is a sphere. And they keep that sphere on them because they also have a cane. Because I have a cane. And think those canes where you can pull it out and it's a sword. But instead of that, it's just the spear. They flip it around and attach to the bottom part of the cane. It's still there. And now you've got a full length spear. Yay! Anyhow, I didn't think of the mechanics of it. I was just like, you know what? That'd be cool. And that's what it is. So they have that. And that kind of shifts in size with them when they need it to the anthro forms that they have. And that's kind of the weapon that they've always kind of had. They're really used to. They know how to use very well. On top of that, they have general knowledge of guns because of their jobs. They can shoot people. Yeah. But their favorite gun being still the sniper rifle. Aside from that, they don't really have any other weapons. They just kind of use their electricity and their general claws, teeth, all that stuff. And so that's what they have. And that is the extent of their powers is well, no. So I will go into their powers to the fullest, even though it's not important yet. So in their godly form or the tar form, however you want to put it, they have the sphere. They also have the ability to create more like larger spheres. But that is like really extensive. They don't really know how to control that. Throughout the entirety of where the lore stops, they can't really control it and they only really use it once. Um but that part of the lore I'm not really gonna talk about because that's not really planned out or put into form yet. That's kind of where the lore's at a pause. But still, they can do it, but that's not gonna be too important. But think like really, really like that one Danganronpa scene. You know what scene. If you don't, just look it up. But either way, um, spears. Yeah, they can create them. They pierce through stuff. They're all godly and things like that, and they disappear. That's about it. Either way, now we continue with the actual storyline. Now that their powers have been explained, and as for Lux's powers, they're a dragon. That's about it. They can fly really, really, really fast, and they breathe fire. Not much else to it. But either way, so right now they're fighting. Phoenix trying to protect Rose. Rose is trying to help out, but can't too much. They also can't really get away because they're ginormous. The two of them are ginormous, and Rose is not. Um, so eventually what happened, because Lux has a tail with spikes, they're able to kind of whip, kind of like cracking a whip, and fling the spikes, which ironically was inspired by the myth that porcupines can do that. They cannot. So yeah, they could shoot those spines and they are barbed and they're large. They're huge spines, but to Phoenix, because they're the same size, roughly, they're still large, but not as large. Though, so Phoenix had been doing a good enough job dodging them, but eventually Phoenix has to go back to their actual normal, like, human size of 5'7", because they're running out of energy and they need to conserve their energy because they need to be able to actually get away with Rose. So they go back to their normal size, and this is when the spears become a lot more dangerous because now they're huge. Not so huge it's going to take up the entire person, but still, big. Um, so finally Lux does fling one at them that hits them. It hits them in the chest. That's why you see that X scar on the character. That's where it hits them, and they're kind of pinned to the wall at this point. They can't really do much because they are very much hurt. Like, if they weren't immortal, they would not be here. Um, and at this point in time, they also don't realize that Lux cannot kill them. Because they know that gods can be killed now, they don't know the extent of what causes a god to be killed, like the qualifications to it. So, Rose panics because Lux is now about to shoot them with a blast of fire that's going to be really hot, and they're like, oh my god, what if that kills them? I don't want my brother to die, I just got them back. Things like that. So they run in, knowing that their fire is way too hot, but like, I have to do something. And they try and control the fire, and they are able to an extent. They're holding it off for a little bit, because what they also grab is Phoenix's shield, which was downsized when they downsized, but they're not able to control it for forever. So Phoenix has to kind of watch because they're stuck. They don't have the energy to get themselves out of where they're stuck from, and they kind of have to watch as their twin is kind of engulfed in flames. So then they panic really bad because they're like, no, this is not happening again, things like that. And this is when they unlock their tar form. Or not really unlock, they panic enough that they find out how to change into it. But instead of fighting Lux, they are protecting Rose. They are encasing Rose. Rose at this point is already gone. But they don't know what to do. And so they think of the only thing they know to do, which is what their mentor did with them. But at the same time, they're like, I also don't want to give everything. Like, I want them to live, but I know it'd be pointless if I don't live. So there's a big flash of light, which scares Lux away. Lux can't see. They flee again. And Phoenix shares their immortality with Rose. So now Rose is immortal, but not immortal enough that they unlock like these different forms, things like that. They just don't die because that's what I wanted. Um, so now they're alive. Phoenix kind of faints. They pass out. They're tired. Things like that. Rose wakes up. They're very confused, but they take Phoenix back to where they live. Things like that. They recuperate. They heal. And things kind of stay at a standpoint of them being worried, them being like, okay, we have to deal with Lux at some point, but we can't deal with them now. We're not really strong enough to. And so it's kind of, they just kind of keep living life for a very long time. And that is where the lore kind of goes to the standpoint of being basically kind of where it is modern times, any of that stuff. So, like, think now times. And that's where the lore gets a little finicky. It used to be built up, but, like, I had to backtrack a good bit. So right now that's where I'm gonna stop, because if I do, it's gonna turn into, well, technically this, or well, technically that, and things like that. But I will go into some key settings that are also there that weren't part of the main lore, but exist in the universe. So while they're in New York, there are other anthropomorphic beings, because in this world, anthropomorphic beings are normal. They kind of just exist, either because they're mythological, but not immortal, or from other planets, because why not? That is why protogens can exist and things like that. Um, so either way, there's racism towards them, but they exist. So there is a bar in New York that Phoenix tends to spend a lot of their time at, which is specifically for those beings. And Phoenix, because that is basically a safe spot for them, they've kind of sworn to protect it. So that is a spot they hang out in a lot. That is where they relax, things like that. And the name of the bartender is unknown. He is a creature. He was what you would describe as just a bartender in a suit. They never leave the bar. Every time you go to look at them, they're constantly shifting faces. Like, their face is never the same. You can never describe what they actually look like. They're consistently shifting. And if you try to take a photo of them, which is how I'm able to draw them, it's just kind of like a purplish, bluish kind of cloud of smog that takes up the form of themselves. But when you actually look at them, that's just consistently shifting and changing into these different anthropomorphic creatures or humans. So you can never actually pinpoint what they actually look like. But they do present as male, like they have a masculine voice and they see themselves as a dude, so there's that. Even though the forms they can shift into can be a feminine form. They kind of waver for every few seconds. So they are kind of stuck to the bar. They are one with the bar. Nobody knows a lot about them, which is why they're unknown. Their name is unknown. What they look like is unknown. How they got here is unknown. That's kind of the whole thing. But he's very kind. He's very nice. The classic bartender trope. So Phoenix will go there, Phoenix will talk to them, they'll give them advice, things like that, and then in return, Phoenix is like, hey, you're really nice, I'm going to help protect this bar. And so that is what they do. That is the other setting that is important to the thing. The rest of the stuff is kind of already explained. So yeah. I think that is about it on the lure. And since I don't know what to say anymore, then that's where I'm going to stop the video. So I hope whoever watches this enjoys. And I'm sorry that this is, if I'm looking at the time, damn near an hour long. Though I guess I shouldn't say sorry, because if you're watching a Lore Yap video, you should expect something long. I know a lot of people enjoy that anyways, so either way, bye bye.